Just to give a brief introduction about myself, I was in the communications industry for over 25 years. And then after that, I moved into the academic circles into doing some active research and teaching as a visiting faculty in a couple of institutions. As part of my research, I'm now into this Center of Excellence for Advanced Automotive Research, where we focus on translational research and trying to bring the fundamental research that's happening in the institutions to the industry, so that which requires more a product-ready technology. So we are trying to bundle the things into something that can be used by the industry. So that's where I'm coming from. Colleague here.
Sure. A very good evening, and thank you very much to Entrepreneur for providing us with this opportunity to share some of my thoughts. I have been in the field of education, development, training for many decades now. I will leave it at that, otherwise I'll be revealing my age itself. But yes, I have been teaching AI way back in 92, 93 when it was Lisp and Prolog programming. It was artificial intelligence and expert system. And of course, today technology has changed a lot. And the last profile that I held before this, I was CEO of an organization called as NASSCOM Foundation, which was the social arm of the IT trade body NASSCOM itself. Then I got headhunted to impact people's lives, the youth of Telangana. And that's where I joined Task about 6 years ago. Our main aim is to democratize opportunities. In 2015, as some of you know, we are the youngest state in India. And being the youngest state, I think we punched double the effort as far as GDP, etc. is concerned, software exports is concerned. And that is where I got an opportunity to help people, because in 2014, less than 10% were locals, and people are not matching up to the expectations of the industry. Today, if we look at it, what is our biggest challenge? Our biggest challenge is we are creating people, and I'm sorry I'm making a very sweeping statement right now, so I hope the software industry people will not hold me to it, but we miss the software bus. Today, we are preparing people for operations and services industry only, all across. And that is what is putting us in a dilemma. How are we going to take care of this changing world where we have been learning languages like Python? And when we learn languages, we are learning the syntax itself. Today, ladies and gentlemen, it's Python, tomorrow it will be Cobra, day after tomorrow it will be something else completely different. Would you keep on doing it again? Instead of that, why don't we start focusing on fundamentals? And that is what Task is actually about. We try to ensure that we are able to skill the youth so that their fundamentals are strong, so that whatever might come in tomorrow, they are able to tide over it. And of course, the last introduction for me is, as far as EV is concerned, I'm an eager learner. Therefore, I ask a question and also, talk a lot about it.
Yeah, so talking about EV, let's probably start with the core competency. As far as the automotive industry is concerned, traditionally automobile has been seen more as a mechanical gadget. A lot of mechanics, a lot of dynamics and those kind of things are there as part of the vehicle. But now we are seeing a shift. So we are, apart from the dynamics which are still there, I mean, suspensions and braking and steering are all still pretty much there. But more importantly, certain core competency are becoming more important when we are actually seeing the shift to the EV. So basically some things like electrical engineering, which is more like motors, powertrains, power electronics, that's become very relevant. Battery technologies, we just heard a lot about battery being talked the last couple of sessions. So battery technology is something which is extremely important. And then besides this, we also have the traditional mechanical and then the things. And most importantly, you touched upon a very interesting aspect where about software. I tend to agree that we could do a lot more with software and a lot more things that if we start focusing away from services and doing the things. And one of the very key areas is basically software is getting a lot into the automotives.
Correct.
So we are looking at a lot of software-defined vehicles, and EV is coming up with a lot of features using software and IoT. So IoT technology is again something which is relevant. So we are seeing a lot of these technologies which are actually moving away from the traditional technologies that automotives have been known to be comprising of. So your thoughts on how actually this kind of a shift and how do you really go about focusing on skilling the workforce with this kind of a shift that's happening?
Sure. So I'll probably talk about the technologies competencies later on, but I'm very happy that you are calling, and this session itself looked at the points which said competencies. Because if you ask me very frankly, having worked in this field for 38 years plus, I think skill is a dead horse. We should stop flogging it. We need to start looking at what I personally call as a C3A model, C3AI model, which is competencies, attitude, aptitude, aspirations, and areas of interest, right? I think today it's important for us, and I always joke, during our day and age, we used to play with something called Meccano, right? Then it became mechanics. Our children were playing with Lego, those building blocks, right? These days, the children, everything has become let go. Everyone is busy playing with their mobiles only. Creativity is zero. So we have to start thinking from that point onwards. Today, critical problem solving, is missing. And why is it missing? Because we as parents have told our children, eat this is good for you when they were growing up, right? When they came to primary school, our teachers told, learn this by heart because tomorrow there's an oral recitation test. When they come to college, educators such as me tell them, ye last year aa gaya hai question paper mein, leave it, you concentrate on this is more important, right? Neither have we taught them how to work in a team, neither have we taught them how to think for themselves. And moving ahead in the age of innovation and creativity, everything is going to be think. Today, we need to, when we talk about, of course, communication, working in a team, there are different kind of stakeholders. As you rightly said earlier, if you knew the ICE engine, you knew everything about a car. You could do any vehicle, in fact, for that matter. But now you have to understand chemical engineering and battery technologies. Things are changing. You need to understand BMS systems. Electronics has to be understood. As you rightly said, electrical has to be understood. You need to understand mechanical engineering because at the end of the day, this is still a moving vehicle, right? Your suspensions, your brakes and everything, your steering is still the same steering, etc. So you have to think about all these also. Plus, there are new components because you are using your audio system or your infotainment system in your cars today. You need to understand UI, UX because how should that be looking at? What are the parameters that a person would like to know when he's on a journey? Right from that place, comes to the other thing. Anyone can hack into your audio system because it is connected to the net to learn which restaurant you are going to today evening, which is your favorite restaurant. So everything the person has to know. When we talk about other things, right? So we need to, and typically I ask a lot of students whenever I talk to them, and I ask them a very simple question. I say, if you have to empty the Indian Ocean using a bucket, how much time will it take? And invariably people say 100 years, it cannot happen. And then I say, okay, let's start thinking logically. What are the two parameters? Size of Indian Ocean, size of bucket. Then they say yes. I said, what if the size of the bucket is half the size of Indian Ocean? Then how much time it will take? So we need to develop this critical problem solving into that.
The critical thinking is.
Absolutely, critical thinking. Communication skills, right? In the previous panel, people were talking about investments and finance, right? You need to understand that also. If you are becoming an entrepreneur, then how do you actually invest in the right place? Like everyone was talking about batteries, right? Today, BYD gives you 600 kilometers. India is still struggling with those kind of things, right? But it could be not because of only battery or the thermal insulation or the batteries, etc. It could be something else. So have we looked at those things? So we need to actually start thinking very differently. We need to stop looking at things that are being done abroad or wherever else. We need to look at Indian road conditions. We need to look at all these things. And of course, AI ML is here to stay. And that is what is required. We need to help our youth or people who are getting trained for this industry to understand data and make effective decisions based on that data. Because a lot of tons and tons of data is being generated, but it's useless unless until some decisions can be taken based on that. We need to help people understand autonomous driving, vehicles, etc. Right? People say, "Are India mein? No, it will not happen." And then I said, "Why will it not happen? Tell me." Because you have to give it some safe environment for it to move, right? And in India, anyone turns wherever they feel like, right? Of course, in Hyderabad, the place I belong to, while traffic is a lot better than Bangalore, but people are always driving on the wrong side. So why can't an autonomous tractor be driven in a farm, which has got a parameter, which has got a GIS fencing, and it can be used over there? So how you apply all these things is also very, very important. And that's where I think today our education system has to change. All our curriculums have to change. And if you ask me, typically when we spoke about skills, we used to talk about the traditional model of T, where you knew a lot of things, but you had the depth of knowledge only in one particular domain. Now moving ahead, you would have two domains, so more like a Roman 2 or a pie shape where you have technology on the top. So IoT, blockchain, sensors, real-time operating systems like QNX, etc. Everything will come up on the top, and you would have a major domain and a subdomain, along with leadership skills, 21st century skills, higher order thinking skills, financial literacy, digital literacy, and everything else coming in. So that's where the skilling ecosystem, and these are the competencies that our people would need to move ahead. But the good news is everything is application of knowledge and learning. So how do you apply whatever you have learned in the domain is what is most important moving ahead.
Yeah, I think you brought up some very valid points. First and foremost, something if I could just summarize in one thing is basically that apart from the various competencies, it's an ability to think outside the box and look at it from an entirely different perspective, bring in a different perspective, which is thing like not an arrow-focused kind of an approach. I think in the last panel's discussion, Professor Satya Chakravarti also kind of brought up that point where why are we always looking at battery, trying to improve the battery to get the range? Why not go look at some other means of solving that and probably improve the dynamics so that we get the better range, which is actually something which is very, very relevant. So this is also very fundamental to the shift that is happening in the industry itself. Now, when we are talking about this shift that's happening, one of the very significant challenges is, apart from building the competency in the newer people coming into the industry, we also are faced with this challenge of actually reskilling people who are already in the automobile industry today. So that is actually being seen as one of the drags on the EV industry itself. If we want to push hard on EV industry, there is actually going to be a societal impact because there are going to be certain jobs which are going to be made obsolete, or they would have to reskill and do something like that. So that's one of the significant challenges which will kind of, as I said, create a drag. And even the government policies, I don't know to what extent you actually being part of the government, you probably can talk a little bit more there on how the government can push ahead of bringing in these changes when there is going to be such societal impacts. So government, my personal thing is probably they will also start being a little bit careful on what they do. But I think this is going to be very essential. So, which means we need to have good strategy in place on how we are going to reskill and ensure that this set of people who have this skills in the with ICE engine technology, being able to now use their intelligence and their creativity with the EV sector. So your thoughts on this?
Sure.
On that?
So some knowledgeable people have been telling me that about 30 to 35% of the traditional automobile would still continue. And
Yes,
that's what you
exactly.
referred to, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But remaining is going to change. So 65%, more than double, is going to change. And that is where the challenge comes in. Now, having said that, I think what is important is let's look at the various categories of people who are there. So I will go first with the largest amount of pool that is available today, which is our mechanics, the corner repair shop, right? Who's still knows only ICE engines. They have never moved to MPFI, forget moving to EVs, right? Fortunately, EV came into India about 5-6 years ago, so not too many problems have been faced so far. But yes, probably in a year or year and a half maximum, we will start facing shortage. And as was mentioned in the previous panel also, that after 5 years, what is the support system? Today, we don't have a support system to help the EVs. So these corner shops, and they are the largest, they've been doing lakhs. And skilling them, reskilling them, in fact, on this one is going to be very, very important. Most of these people are not even skilled, semi-skilled, right? They follow that Ustad Parampara, right? They go and join a repair shop when they are kids, and that's how they learn on the job itself. Today, they are the largest numbers. We have to reskill them for EV. And that is going to be a challenge. While our Honorable Prime Minister talks about, reskilling, upskilling, etc., right? So it's skill, reskill, upskill. But for them, because this entire thing is going to change, how are we going to change their mindset? How are we going to help them understand that earlier it was a 12 volt, which used to come into your automobile, etc., in most of the places, but now there could be thousands of volts. So it's everyone has to be reskilled, including our caregivers. An ambulance comes, it is when EV has had an accident, and someone might touch it without knowing and get electrocuted. Now, all these people have to be trained, and the only way of doing it is running hands-on skilling programs, right? It doesn't matter whether they know the technology of how EV works. If they just know how the entire BMS and everything else, etc., is fitting in, how the mechanical things have been fitting in. Of course, there would be various levels. So you will have people who will be only taking care of in case you have a hacking attempt. So how do you make your thing secure? The manufacturers also will have to take care of all these things. Without industry support, with only governments, I don't think we will be able to crack this problem, especially for the mechanics.
Absolutely.
Right. When you move to the second level, which is the people who are in the manufacturing industry itself, right? I think they have been quite agile. Our manufacturers like Mahindra and others have started using people, training them on the job itself, and getting them, starting to manufacture the cars, etc., and everything else. I think that's a easier problem to solve. In fact, if you look at Telangana itself, one is, as part of advanced technology centers, ITIs with the government is paying a lot of attention to now, and polytechnics also, because they also have realized that, unfortunately, in the current education system, the previous education system, engineering was teaching you the definition of a screwdriver. It didn't tell you how to use it, where to use it, when to use it. And today, our technical institutions are the ones who are able to provide the backbone of all manufacturing.
True, very true.
While we have missed the software bus, we have to catch the manufacturing bus. And if we don't create people for the manufacturing industry, EV being a large part of it, semiconductors being the second part of it, then we will never be a developed nation. So this has to be taken as a mission mode project, and then start skilling. Government has to play a part. As I said, industry bodies have to play a part. Then only things can happen. And of course, we should use technology. Some of the cases we should use XR, augmented reality, extended reality, etc., to provide, instead of the actual thing, those kind of training. Fault detection and fault solving is the skills that need to be trained also. So we have to change our curriculums and ensure that it is more application oriented instead of more of theory and generic.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good point that you brought up about the fault detection and trace. Which basically, if we look at it, the skills that is required, we need to clearly demarcate into two sets. One set being the skills that is required more from a development or a design perspective, the design thinking, the creative thinking, where people get more into actually the designing the newer ones.
Absolutely.
But we need a larger chunk who can actually focus more on problem detection, problem solving, and this more of diagnostics and that kind of a thing. So I think we need to have a two-pronged approach in this kind of a reskilling thing.
Absolutely, I agree with you. And I always say, for good music, you need musicians who are the skilled workforce, but you also need the Bachs and Beethovens who will actually do the research part of it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right? If you need good music, you need both of them equally.
Right. So actually, talking about this brings us to the next topic. When we are talking about reskilling and these things, we need to have a lot of strategic partnership and working relationship with industry and foster that thing with the academics. A lot of strategic things is involved. So based on your experience, since you have actually had the experience of being in the academic side on one side, also the policy making and the government and the NASSCOMs, the other side. So you would appreciate the importance of this strategic relationship a lot more, where it is not about one organization which can take a lead and do things, but it's always like both going hand in hand. Like government will normally, at least in Indian case, normally government will wait for the industry to start playing its role, start moving its pawns or whatever it is. Then the government will start laying down its policies and helping out the situation. But then the moment that happens, more people start moving. So it's basically like both moving one after the other kind of a scenario. So what do you feel about this? How do you think that we can actually accelerate this whole process so that our adoption and basically institutionalization of some of these skilling perspective, reskilling and or building the right competencies, all these things can be taken down to the grassroots level more quickly, because that is what is the need of the hour today. So what are your thoughts on this,
Sure.
Srikanth?
So 2016 was the year when Telangana came up with their first EV policy itself. And if you look at how things are happening in Telangana, I'll probably use that as a case to point, while I am aware that I'm sitting in the automobile manufacturing center of the country itself. Today, Chennai is considered to be the largest manufacturing hub. But we are setting up a Telangana Mobility Valley, right? Where we will be focusing on green vehicles, etc., etc. EV would be a substantial part of it. Already Mahindra has got their plant over there, and they're making EV tractors also over there, as well as vehicles over there. So that's where it is. So I think what has happened over there is, yes, every government should make an enabling policy, right? I think incentives can be given by every government, land can be given by every government. The difference that tasks makes over there, and we are on most of the investment tables also, is that we are able to provide you with the trained manpower, entry-level trained manpower, which is what makes your difference between a successful ramp-up, because you'll get your senior folks from wherever you are coming from. So that's typically how it is. But yes, this is where we fit in. So this is one of the models. Second thing is, if you look at us, 700 companies work with us very, very closely. They advertise their entry-level jobs on our portal, right? So we also understand what the industry requires. Today, the need is to understand what industry requires and how it can be implemented. And that's what I think the important thing that you asked is, we run a program called as, in fact, two programs I'll mention. One is what is called as Kalam Center, Task Kalam Center for Automotive Excellence. Now, this is a thing where we run a 30 days program. Half of it is, 60% of it is hands-on, right? Where we are skilling people for the manufacturing industry, right? Today, you need to ramp up the thing. I think it's a catch-22 situation also. I think the cost of ownership also has to be brought down. Government has to bring in substantial schemes. Charging infrastructure has to be, done over there. And training on the charging infrastructure has to be provided. So it's not only on the EV, it's the entire ecosystem that we have to look at.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, I think that's very important.
Absolutely. And we need to also make people aware of the various, standards that are there. Global standards, Indian standards, and look at all of that also. So I think it's a three-pronged approach, and it's a win-win situation for all.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
Industry, if they contribute, they get the right trained manpower, right? So I think process of practice kind of concept should be brought in. One thing which any academicians over here, then I already say sorry because I'm going to make a very sweeping statement again. I think what has happened about 10 years ago, right? People who could not get into the IT industry went ahead to do their MTechs, etc., and started teaching in our colleges. They have never been to the industry. They don't even know how things are happening over there. So I think it starts with there. And in fact, we are, I'm just taking another example of a program that we run called Project Drona, which is focused towards IT, artificial intelligence, etc. But what we are trying to do over there is get faculties to undergo an immersive experience of internship in the industry. I'll encourage all the EV startups to please permit students to come for industry visits to your companies, to your factories, to your shop floor, so that they know how things are happening over there. Because today they are clueless. They still feel that, it's an assembly line which is 150 plus stations and things like that. This has to change. That can only happen if all the forces work together towards solving it.
Yeah, I think we have been talking a lot, and we can actually talk about this topic for hours together.
Absolutely.
For long hours. So in interest of time, maybe we can just open up for any questions that we might have from the audience before.
Probably two questions,
Yeah.
if the organizers permit. Because here we have a gentleman who is looking at design itself, and I'm from the skilling side. So unfortunately, I'm not competent to talk about the actual EV technologies, etc. that much.
Anyway, okay.
I think either
Thank you then.
it happened as OHT,
Yeah.
overhead transmission, or everything was understood. Great. Anyway, thank you very much, ladies and
for
gentlemen.
giving this opportunity. Thank you.